The first one, the cross tabulation and the chi-square test, where both the independent variable and the dependent variable are categorical in nature. Then we had seen compare means, and in that specifically independent sample t-test, where the independent variable was categorical in nature and dependent variable was continuous in nature. And today we are going to see correlation and regression. Regression I will take it in the next class. Today only correlation, where both the independent variable and your dependent variable are continuous in nature. So both your independent and your dependent variable should have the measurement of scale, that is either ratio or interval data. Okay, then only you can perform your correlation and your regression. Is it clear? Okay, now my slide has changed. Okay. So I am just giving a brief about correlation, and like last time in independent sample t-test, I also shown how you need to write your hypothesis. Likewise, for correlation also we will see the statement of how we can write the hypothesis, the null and the alternate hypothesis. So we know that correlation, we have a couple of tests, and Pearson correlation is one among that. So mostly in your SPSS software, we will be using the Pearson correlation. When we say bivariate correlation, we refer to Pearson correlation only. And whenever your independent variable and dependent variable are continuous in nature, you can perform both these tests, correlation as well as regression. So today's class, just looking at correlation, we know that for correlation we have a correlation coefficient which is denoted by small r. This particular r value or the correlation coefficient value will help us to know about the strength and the direction of the linear relation. So strength, I mean, like depending upon what value we have. Suppose if we have 0.9, we say it is a strong relationship. If it is 0.3, we say it is a weak relationship. So we know what strength the relationship exists between variable x and variable y. And direction, I mean whether it is positive, that is an upward moving slope, or negative, that is a downward moving slope. So which direction the relationship exists for again variable x and variable y. So this is what correlation helps us to measure the strength and the direction. Now, this correlation cannot be used for non-linear relationship. If the relationship between the variables x and y, the independent variable and the dependent variable, is not linear, then correlation cannot be performed. That is why before we even run the correlation test, we plot the scatter plot in order to know whether the relationship is a linear one or a non-linear one. If it is a non-linear one, then we cannot use correlation. There are other tests that we have to use in order to measure the relationship between the two variables. And also for categorical variables, since we know that both are independent and a dependent variable should be continuous in nature, it cannot be categorical, which means it cannot be a nominal data and it cannot be an ordinal data. It has to be either ratio or an interval scale data. So it cannot be used for categorical data as well, or categorical variables as well. So for these two scenarios, you cannot use correlation and you cannot use regression as well. Now correlation coefficient R value also we know it is between -1 to +1, and if the correlation value is -1 R value, that means it is a perfect negative relationship, linear relationship that exists. If it is a positive plus 1, then perfect positive relationship exists between the variables. And 0 means there is no relationship, or we can also say that the relationship between the variables are non-linear. Rather than saying no relationship, there exists some relationship, but the thing is that it is not linear. It will be non-linear if the correlation value is coming as 0. So these are some basic things which we have already seen in statistics, as well as when we were doing in correlation in Excel, but it's just a kind of a repetition that I was trying to do. So again, this particular slide tells you what the correlation R value indicates. It indicates whether the relationship is statistically significant, linear relationship, or is it non-linear relationship. It also tells you about the strength of the relationship and the direction of the relationship, as we have seen in the previous slide. There are two assumptions that you need to keep in mind. That is, all the observations are independent observations. That means they are not dependent on any particular variable, or not dependent on any other observation. Each and every observation has to be independent of each other. And the second assumption that we have to take into consideration is normality. This assumption is not needed when the sample size is less than 25. Sorry, when the sample size is 25 or more. Only when the sample size is less than 25, then we have to do the normality test. You just need to remember that these are the assumptions that you need to make whenever you are running the correlation test. Now, this particular slide is again telling you -1 is a perfectly negative linear relationship, 0 means no relationship, or we can say that it is a non-linear relationship between the variables x and y. +1 is a perfectly positive linear relationship. And about the strength, we have certain guidelines, and this can vary according to discipline to discipline. Okay, so we're just going to assume that between zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.3. That means minus -0 0.1 to minus -0 0.3 will also be considered. These are considered as small or weak correlation. If it is between zero point 0.3 and zero point 0.5, or minus -0 0.3 and minus -0 0.5, we will say medium or moderate correlation. Okay. And if it is zero point 0.5 and greater, or minus -0 0.5 and greater, it will be large and strong correlation. So depending on the R value that you get, you will write either weak, moderate, or strong correlation, and obviously the positive, or it is a negative one, or is it having no relationship. So whenever you are interpreting the value of R, you need to interpret in terms of your direction, as well as in terms of your strength as well. So this is how your scatter plot looks like. It is just showing you the relationship between the two variables. It's for different correlation values, and with sample size of 100. This is how your uh, graphs will look like. And coming to the main portion or main part of how to write your hypothesis for correlation. Okay. Now, before you perform correlation, you have to be sure whether it is a two-tailed significance test that you have to perform, or one-tailed significance test. Now, you understand, right? What do you mean by two-tailed and one-tailed? Anyone? Anyone remembers what you mean by two-tailed and one-tailed test? Yes? Okay. Um, okay. Since I do not have a picture right now, I'll do one thing. I'll just tell you the hypothesis, and when I solve a problem, and when there is a problem which I give you to solve, I'll try to get a hang of a picture and then try to explain what is two-tailed and one-tailed. For now, please assume that two-tailed is when you draw a normal bell-shaped curve. You have two areas on both the tails, and the center area is the area which you are calculating the confidence levels, the upper limit and the lower limit, and also finding out whether the value which you are trying to prove is falling within this particular limits, 95% confidence interval or 99% confidence interval, or outside these 95 or 99% confidence interval. The area outside that is known as your alpha value, and this alpha, if you have on both these sides, then you call it as a two-tailed significance test. If the alpha is present only on one tail, that is either in the left side or in the right side, then you call it as one-tailed significance test. So I'll try to get a picture and show it in the meanwhile. But for now, please do with what is there on these slides. So for writing the two-tailed significance test, you will write null hypothesis is equal to the population correlation coefficient is equal to 0. So there is no association between the variable x and variable y. That is what is your null hypothesis. And your alternate hypothesis is just the opposite of your null hypothesis. So here we will say that the population correlation coefficient is not equal to 0. That means there is association between the variables x and y, or you can say there is a relationship between the variables x and y. Now for one-tailed significance test, the null hypothesis remains the same. Population correlation coefficient is equal to 0. That means no association between the variables. But when you write the alternate hypothesis, it depends which side your alpha value is. Okay. So your alpha value, if it is towards your left side, then you will write that a positive correlation could exist between the two variables. So you will write H1 is population correlation coefficient is greater than 0, and a positive correlation could exist between the two variables. And if the alpha value is towards your right hand side, then you will write a negative correlation could exist. Okay, so this is how you need to write your hypothesis. For now, we're just going to do a two-tailed significance test, which will make use of these two assumptions of null and alternate hypothesis. Okay, so you can open your SPSS software. I also share the screen for SPSS software. Okay, so my SPC screen is visible. Okay. Now please pay attention to this. If you have not paid attention to these slides, it's okay. But how to do it in SPSS? For the next 10 to 15 minutes, please just pay attention to this, how you have to carry it out. So you have to, for performing your correlation, you will input the values in your variable view and your data view. Okay. So in your exam, since the question will be given in the Word document or the PDF document, you need to input the value into the SPSS software. So first enter your variable names, price, demand. We are going to just see the correlation between price and demand. Okay, so you will input the values price and demand, and do not forget to make your measure as scale. Okay, choose here as scale. If you choose ordinal or nominal, it will not allow you to perform the correlation test in SPSS software. So for correlation, please see that your measure is always scale. Okay, and all the other information you know how to fill it up, so I'm not repeating that. Once you have entered the data of price and demand in the variable view, enter all the values in your data view. Okay, so these are the two columns. Yes. Yes, yes. Because your correlation, your independent variable and your dependent variable should have the measure of scale. You cannot do it for categorical data. No, ordinal and nominal are for your categorical. These are all categorical. Scale has ratio and interval. These are non-categorical, or you can say continuous scale. So you have to have scale over here, otherwise it will not allow you to perform. It will show you an error in SPSS when you start performing your correlation. Okay. So while in your exam, like first midterm ho ya end semester ho, you have to put the values, enter the values in your SPSS software. For now, I have shared the sheet with you, but for exam, please you have to enter the data into your SPSS variable view and data view, and then you have to run your analysis. So for running your analysis, the first thing that you have to do for correlation is plot the scatter plot. Okay. For doing that, anyone remembers where your graphs are present, where you can find scatter plot among these tabs? Where should I go for scatter plot? Graphs, chart builder. You can click on OK, and here. Yes. So you can choose scatter and dot. So you choose this, select this, drag and drop it over here in this particular area. Okay, you should get like this. Okay, I'll show you two ways where you can find scatter plot. Okay, the first method is graph, chart builder. When we get this dialog box, but dialog box are visible, right? Everything is visible. Yes. Okay. After this, you get a dialog box. Click on OK. You get this particular box coming up, chart builder box. Here you will have choose from in gallery. Choose from, you have different kinds of charts over here. Choose your scatter or dot. Okay. And when you select that, you have charts shown over here with respect to scatter and dot. Select the very first one, which is a simple scatter. Drag that and drop it in this particular white area. Okay, just drop it. You will have this coming up. Fine, done, everyone. Okay, once you're done, here it doesn't matter which is your x or which is your y variable. Okay, drag and drop your price and demand. Demand in x axis, price in y axis. Drag and drop that, you will have something like this. Getting it? Click on OK. Getting the graph in your output window. Okay. This is your scatter plot. Yes. Double double click that. Okay. See? You see that? Okay. Now double click that particular chart. Okay. Now one you can also increase like this. Fine. For after you get your chart, double click on that chart. You will get again a chart editor. Getting it, everyone? Double click your chart in your output window. ओके, आउटपुट विंडो में जो चार्ट आया है उसको डबल क्लिक करो, यू शुड गेट अ चार्ट एडिटर अगेन विद द चार्ट ग्राफ शोइंग ऑन द स्क्रीन. यहाँ पे प्रॉपर्टीज प्रॉपर्टीज नहीं आ रहा है, बस डायरेक्टली ये आएगा. अच्छा, उसमें एलिमेंट्स दिख रहा है, एलिमेंट्स एलिमेंट्स या एलिमेंट्स में ये दिख रहा है, फिट लाइन एट टोटल, ये सिंबल दिख रहा है कहीं पे. ठीक है, देवदत्त, जस्ट हैंग ऑन. ओके, just let me complete this and then you can share your screen and show me. ठीक है. Okay. For those who are getting this, okay, elements fit line at total, select this. Okay, यहाँ पे select linear and click. यहाँ पे linear selected है तो बस ओके करना, अप्लाई करना और क्लोज कर देना. या फिर if you have anything else selected then select linear and just close. Fine. You should have this line coming up. Just one second, one second. क्या बोल रहे हैं? Okay. 95%. Yes, yes. Okay. So once you double click on the chart, go to elements, fit line at total. Okay. यहाँ पे you will have one more properties coming up, fit line. In this, select linear because we want to do a linear one. Select linear and apply and close. Okay. If linear is already selected, then you just have to click close. Now I'm selecting linear, apply, close, and then you can close this chart editor. So you see this particular line coming up, and you also have this r square value over here, 0.972. Getting it, everyone? Okay. So this is your scatter plot. यहाँ पे just one second. Okay. After this, you can perform your correlation. Okay. Now there is another method also. You can do your graphs, which is graphs, legacy dialogues, and straight away you find scatter dot. Okay. Either you go to chart builder or you can go to legacy dialogues and scatter dot. The same thing again. Simple scatter, define. Here you have to put the variables again like price and demand, and you can click on OK. You will again get the same graph and do the same thing. Double click on this, go to elements, fit line at total, linear, and close. So you get your r square value also over here. ठीक है. So both the methods, you can use any one method for getting your chart on the screen. Till here everyone is clear? Yes. It will just be mentioned perform correlation for the below data, or the data will be given to you and question will be choose any one of the tests. If 3 tests will be given and you have to choose any one of the tests and perform it. You have to identify which test and then perform accordingly on the data. Got the question? ठीक है. Either it will be given straight away in the question what test you have to perform, or else you will have to decide depending upon the data what kind of scale it is using, what kind of measure it is using, and then decide कि कौन सा टेस्ट करना है, इंडिपेंडेंट सैम्पल टी टेस्ट या काई स्क्वायर या कॉरिलेशन या रिग्रेशन, व्हाट यू हैव टू परफॉर्म. ठीक है. I will either mention it or I'll keep it open. You have to identify by seeing what kind of measure it will use and then do it. ठीक है, either one. Yes, you can only perform correlation if your independent and dependent variable are scale. समझ में आया? Okay. Now suppose you have independent variable and dependent variable. Okay, fine. If your independent variable is categorical, that means either ordinal or nominal. Okay? And the same thing if it is for dependent variable also. Then you have to perform cross tab. You can perform chi-square. Got it? आप समझ में आ रहा है? Now, if your independent variable is again categorical, dependent variable is continuous. That means either ratio और इंटरवल. ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे you will do compare means which is independent sample t test. That is what we have learned. Okay, fine. Now if both your independent and your dependent variable are continuous, then you can perform correlation or you can perform regression. Yeah. Everyone, is it clear now? ठीक है. So based on your data का नीचे में, now if I give you price and demand, obviously data values are given which you have to put in your data view. So you will have to see कि what kind of values are given. अगर वो scale kind of values है, that means it is a continuous scale for price and demand. That means you have to use correlation or regression. Since we have two tests over here, I'll specifically mention over here correlation you have to perform. Okay, या फिर regression you have to perform. But otherwise, you will have to decide कि कौन सा test करना है, depending upon what kind of measure the independent variable is using and what kind of measure the dependent variable is using. ठीक है? Fine. Okay. Now, once you get your scatter plot, this particular output will also go into your document, okay, the answer script. When you then you have to perform your correlation, because we know this is a linear relationship. Okay, almost all the points are on the line or near to that particular line. So we can perform now correlation, and we also know it is a downward sloping line. That means there is a negative relationship between the price and the demand. So we'll go to analyze, you'll go to correlate, and you'll go to bivariate. ठीक है. Analyze, correlate, and bivariate. Click on this. Everyone getting this box? Yes. Click on price and demand and shift it to variables box. Okay. यहाँ पे in options you have this options, you can click this. It's not mandatory, but you can select mean and standard deviation as well. So it will tell you what is the mean value and the standard deviation for these variables. So for now, to show you, I am ticking both mean and the standard deviation. Otherwise, this is not required. And the ones which are required is you need to have this Pearson checked, two-tailed checked, and flag significant correlation checked. So all these three should be ticked. Okay, by default, this is what will be selected. If not, you will have to manually select all these three. And after that, just click on OK. You should get two tables now. Options, mean and standard deviation. Mean and standard deviations. This is optional. If you want to know what is the mean and the standard deviation for price and demand, you can select this, or otherwise you can leave it unchecked. Okay, you don't have to check this. If you don't check that, you will not get this descriptive statistics box. That's all. Otherwise, you will have two boxes coming up in your output. Fine. Okay. So this is your correlation table. We know that whenever the variable correlates with itself, price with price, it will have always, the value will be 1. So the diagonals are always 1. So you see price and price 1, demand and demand 1. And the values this side and this side are the same. Okay. So you can see the values only this below the diagonal, or you can see the values above the diagonal. It will have the same set of values only. So here price and demand ka value you see minus 0.986. We can also see from this scatter plot that the line is downward sloping. So we knew that it is a negative relationship between the two variables. And here also in the correlation box, we can see it is minus. Minus indicating a negative relationship between demand and price. And the R value is minus 0.986. Point 0.9 is obviously what is the strength of the relationship over here? Strong. Okay, strong relationship. So we have a strong negative relationship between the demand and the price. Okay, so this one you can write it like this. Okay, so you can write it like this. This is what you get, and this is the graph that you're getting in your scatter plot. So you can write the interpretation as this. So this is, I have just tried these 4 points which you see over here are just explanation for the values which you have in this particular box. Okay, so the first one is correlation of price with itself. So R value is 1. Then correlation of price and demand, which is minus 0.986. Correlation of price and demand again, which is minus 0.986, and correlation of demand with demand is 1. For all these, the number of observations are 40. Okay, 14, 14, 14, 14. Sometimes the number of observations might change, okay, because of missing values. So you don't have to worry about that. Here it will be given how much observations it has taken into consideration for finding out the correlation between the variables. The main part again is the interpretation now. So यहाँ पे मैंने hypothesis लिखना भूल गई हूँ. So your hypothesis will be null hypothesis will be there is no association between the variables price and demand. and you will write again this, and you will write there is an association between the variables price and demand. Okay, so your null and alternate hypothesis should be these. Should I repeat it, or is it fine? Should I repeat the null and alternate? Okay. Okay. The null hypothesis is, right, H naught is the population correlation coefficient is equal to 0, and in brackets, right, there is no association between price and demand. Okay. Again, write this part, H1 is population correlation coefficient not equal to 0, and in brackets, there is association between price and demand. Okay, please write that hypothesis first, then come to this pictures that you have got in the output window, and after that finally the interpretation. So your interpretation, you will write it as the Pearson correlation coefficient for price and demand is whatever value you have got over here, minus 0.986, which is significant. Now, at what level is it significant? You see two stars over here. If you see over here, you see two stars in this particular boxes. These two stars here, it means it is significant at zero point zero 0.01 level. That is 99%. Okay, 99% confidence interval, confidence level. If we take, it is telling me that it is the value is minus 0.986. If it was one star, then it would have put one star over here, and it would have written correlation is significant at the 0.05 level, which is 95%. ठीक है, यहाँ पे ये है significant at 0.01 level, which is 99% confidence level. समझ में आया? Is this clear? Okay. Okay, so here that is what I am writing over here. Pearson correlation coefficient for price and demand is minus 0.986, which is significant. In brackets, whatever is given over here, P is less than 0.01. You can see the value over here. It is less than 0.01. Okay, for a two-tailed test. It is written over here, two-tailed test, and we are performing two-tailed tests based on the number of observations that you have. We have 14 observations, so 14 complete observations. The first interpretation point is clear. How you have to write it? Okay. The next is, again you can write it alternatively as price and demand have a statistically significant linear relationship. Here please add negative linear relationship. R value is minus 0.986, comma P is less than 0.001. Either write it in like this or write it like the second point. Any one way you can write your first point in your interpretation, either the point 1 or point 2. Fine. The next one is the direction of the relationship is negative because we have a negative sign. They are negatively correlated, meaning that when one variable increases, the other variable tends to decrease, as we can see on the scatter plot. And the magnitude or strength of the association is, since it minus 0.9, we are saying it as strong. Okay, so either one of these first 2 points, this is your second interpretation and this is your third interpretation with respect to direction and strength. Clear? Yes, 3 points. 3 points. Okay, so you'll have null and your, sorry. The magnitude or strength of the association is strong because your value is minus 0.9, right? It is between 0.5 and 1. So therefore it is strong. That is what you have to write. Okay. So for your correlation, whenever you are running it, you will first write your null hypothesis, then run your scatter plot. put that particular diagram. After you find that it is a linear relationship, then start your correlation using analyze, correlate, and bivariate. Run the correlation, you will get this box, and after this, write the interpretation based on the hypothesis. So, we are concluding that there is an association between the price and the demand. Therefore, our alternate hypothesis is true and we reject our null hypothesis. Okay, the final statement will be that. Fine. Okay, I'm just adding. Yes, yes, I'm adding that. Okay, so there is an association between price and demand. So we accept the alternate hypothesis and reject null hypothesis. This you can also see with respect to the significance value. The p value is less than 0.05. So because of that also we can say that our alternate hypothesis is accepted and we are rejecting our null hypothesis. Fine. So this will be your complete slide. Okay. Anyone has any queries on correlation of how you have to run it and what are the steps you have to perform? Any queries? This is the steps. Okay, while writing your steps, you write your steps as well, right? So the main thing is that you have to write your null hypothesis. You can write your steps, put the screenshots of these two, and then finally the interpretation. Okay. Is it okay? So if you're clear with how to run correlation for price and demand, in the same sheet you have for smoking age and number of cigarettes. Please run the correlation for these two set of variables and tell me the output along with your null hypothesis. Okay, so you can put your null and the alternate hypothesis in the chat window, then run the correlation and then tell me what are the interpretations that you get. Please write in the chat window. Is it okay? Fine. Okay.